Fab4 Expression presents the Unapologetically Reborn podcast hosted by Cody, Fulin, and Alicia Lynch. This podcast is meant to support awareness and reflection, but it is not a substitute for professional mental health care. If you need support, please reach out to a licensed professional or a trusted resource. A downloadable workbook can be found by visiting our website www.unapologeticallyreborn.com.
Welcome to Unapologetically Reborn. I'm Cody.
I'm Alicia. Welcome back to the show. Today we're tackling an emotional state that's incredibly intense, confusing, and honestly a little bit terrifying when you're in the middle of it. We're talking about, why do I feel physically addicted to this person? To answer this with clarity, it will take multiple episodes because I want to give you the language for researching it yourself, if you'd like further explanation, and the mechanisms behind this conversation. The question asked here is, why am I addicted to this person? Okay. But to understand this, we need to also create a question, that is, what a feeling became attached to this person. Because once we can identify the feeling, we can begin to understand the attachment. This email comes from Scott in Ohio. He'd like to know why, even though he knows his girlfriend is probably not healthy for him, he can't seem to break it off and is having a hard time understanding why. If you've ever felt this way, you probably felt a lot of shame. And you might ask yourself, why am I acting like a fool? Why can't I just walk away? Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to remove the shame entirely. And we're going to dive into the hard neuroscience of relationship addiction. We're going to look at how your brain's chemical reward system can be completely hijacked by chaos, why steady love can feel incredibly boring when you're used to a storm, and how to break the chemical chains. If you're currently nursing a relationship hangover and you don't know how to stop the craving, grab a seat and let's dissect exactly what's happening inside of your brain. This is going to be a 2-part series, possibly a 3, because there's so much to unpack here. Let's look at a relationship breaking up. Okay, here's an analogy. Notice how 2 people can experience the same exact breakup differently. One moves on and the other one is completely devastated. Why? Do you know why?
Nope.
The relationship meant something different to each person. So maybe one person, the relationship represented safety, belonging, validation, hope, family. The attachment isn't always to the individual themselves. It's often as the meaning. When we lose the person, we often lose what they symbolized. The deeper the meaning, the stronger the attachment. So imagine someone spends years feeling unseen. Then one person comes along and says, "Tell me about yourself. I understand you. I see what you've been through. Your feelings make sense." So for the first time, you feel visible. That experience can be so incredibly powerful, not because the person's perfect, but because the person has been associated with being seen. So when the relationship ends, the loss can feel like nobody's ever going to understand me again. And that's why the attachment can feel so intense. We're going to explain this in more detail in episode 2, possibly 3. Quick side note, the workbook that coincides with this episode is being utilized for all the episodes, so it might be thicker than usual.
And it won't be like a 52-minute episode or anything. We're cutting that, to parts.
Yeah, I'm going to try to be more cognizant about time. I elected to go longer in the last episode, which I feel was a mistake. I had 15 extra minutes of material, and then I didn't want to do a 15-minute podcast for the next time, so I didn't break it into, multiple episodes. So to begin this explanation, let's look at the science behind it, and then we'll move more into possible attachment theory reasons. But remember, everyone here is different. So some reasons might include a subconscious loss or unmet need. So a person may represent, this isn't for everybody, remember. This could represent for someone a parent who wasn't emotionally available, the acceptance that you never received, the safety that you longed for, feeling of being chosen. In these cases, the intensity of the attachment often feels bigger than the actual relationship itself. Sometimes you're not reacting childhood. Sometimes you simply love someone deeply. So if someone was kind, consistent, emotionally available, an important part of your daily life, then losing them hurts, because losing meaningful relationships hurts. Not everything is pathology. Grief isn't always trauma. Humans, they become attached through repetition. So if you talk to someone every morning, every night, throughout the day, your brain adapts to their presence. When they're gone, there's a real disruption. The absence can feel similar to withdrawal, because your routines, your expectations, and your reward system have changed. This can create enormous attachment without necessarily involving childhood trauma. So when someone's hot and cold, available, unavailable, affectionate, and then distant, the uncertainty itself can become addictive. So the brain starts chasing the hit of connection. Sometimes what you're grieving isn't the person, you're grieving who you were when you were with them. So let's just say, for an example, I was a wife. I was someone's partner. I had a future. I belonged somewhere. When the relationship ends, part of your identity disappears. This can create an intense feeling of craving. So to understand relationship addiction, we have to look at past romance and look straight at brain chemistry. Your brain has a neurotransmitter, which we've discussed previous, called dopamine. Dopamine is not the chemical of pleasure, it's the chemical of anticipation and pursuit. It's the brain's internal go-get-it signal. So when you're in a healthy, stable relationship, dopamine is released in a steady, predictable way. Okay? It feels like a glass of water. It's refreshing, it's reliable, but it doesn't cause a massive rush. But when you're addicted to someone, the relationship is usually volatile. So they love you today, they ignore you tomorrow, they pull away, you have to chase them to get them back in. This volatility gives like a drip feed effect. So imagine you're walking through a hot desert. If someone hands you an open bottle of water, you drink it, your thirst is quenched, you relax.
Yep.
You don't obsess over the bottle because you have it. What if someone trapped you in a room and they only gave you water through a tiny eyedropper?
I'd cry.
I'm trying to sit over here because I feel like my glasses are reflecting the computer screen. So one single drop every 2 hours. Let's say you got that. Okay.
Remind me of a gerbil.
Yeah. Your thirst is never fully quenched. You become completely consumed by the next drop. You can't sleep. You can't think. You can't focus on anything else except staring at the eyedropper. Okay. So an inconsistent partner, we're going to use like for the eyedropper, because they only give you validation, attention, or love in tiny, unpredictable drops. Your brain is flooded with massive spikes of dopamine during the anticipation of the next drop. When they finally text you back after 3 days of silence, that isn't just relief of you feeling, it's a massive synthetic chemical explosion in your brain's reward center. You become addicted to the high of the pursuit, not the actual reality of the person. This leads us into a psychological concept that we've touched on before, but we need to view it today through the lens of pure dependency. It's intermittent reinforcement. In psychology, the strongest way to condition an animal or a human to repeat a behavior is to reward them unpredictably. So if a behavior is rewarded every single time, the interest eventually drops. Okay. But if a reward is completely random, the behavior becomes an obsession. That's how they look at it. Let's look at the deep comparison between how your brain reacts to a toxic, unpredictable relationship versus a healthy one. In an addicted relationship, the cycle looks like a roller coaster. You have massive fights, agonizing silences, and intense anxiety. Then you have passionate makeup session or a deep emotional conversation where they finally open up. This dramatic shift from deep anxiety to intense relief triggers the release of endorphins and oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. Your brain associates the pain with the pleasure, so you literally train your nervous system to believe that if there's no pain, there's no passion. Let's contrast this with a healthy relationship baseline. So a healthy love is more like a flat road. It's consistent, safe. But if you've been riding a roller coaster for years, stepping onto a flat road doesn't feel safe at first. It feels boring. Your nervous system goes into like an adrenaline withdrawal. You might go out with a perfectly kind, stable person and think, there's just no spark here. And I realize that we've discussed this on a previous episode, but just bear with me. Let's look at, reframe from what a spark actually is. So often people talk about a spark in the first few weeks of dating. They aren't describing love. They're describing their nervous system detecting anxiety, unpredictability, and danger. So your brain is confusing the panic of a roller coaster with the butterflies of romance. Now we have to ask the deepest question of the episode. Why do our brains choose the eyedropper? Why are we drawn to the roller coaster in the first place? I wouldn't call that the deepest question, but one of them. So to answer this, we have to look into the past, specifically at attachment theory. So as children, we learn what love looks like based on our primary caregivers. If you grew up in an environment where love was consistent, calm, and unconditional, your adult brain will naturally seek out consistent, calm partners, and it feels normal. But if you grew up in a home where love was unconditional, if you had to earn your parents' approval, or a parent was emotionally distant, volatile, or unpredictable, meaning you never knew if you're going to get the happy version of them or the angry version of them. If that was your childhood, your brain unconsciously is wired for a dangerous equation, which is love equals struggle. So to your subconscious mind, the act of chasing someone, trying to fix them, or trying to earn their affection feels like home. It's a concept called repetition compulsion. Your adult brain seeks out unpredictable people because it's desperately trying to rewrite your childhood script. It thinks if I can finally get this emotionally unavailable person to love me, I will finally heal the wound from my past. Now remember, this isn't everybody. This is some people. Now, hear me when I say you cannot heal a childhood wound by repeating the childhood trauma. So when you chase an unavailable person, you aren't fixing the past. You're just renting the space in the exact same burning building that you grew up in. You're addicted to them because their rejection feels familiar, and your brain mistakes that familiarity for destiny. So how do we break a chemical addiction? If you're listening to this right now and you realize that your brain has been hijacked by an eyedropper relationship, here's your official relationship detox strategy. First, you have to accept that what you're going through is going to be withdrawal. So when you cut contact with an addictive person, should you choose to, your brain will physically crave the dopamine spike. You're going to feel anxious, lonely, and physically achy. Do not mistake this withdrawal for signs from the universe that you belong together. This is just your brain chemistry resetting. So treat it like a physical flu. Rest, stay away from the phone, let the chemicals clear out your system.
Drink some 7-Up and eat some bonbons.
Yeah. So, homework for the week. Reality audit. So let's take out a piece of paper and write down the top 5 worst moments of the relationship. You're going to write down the moments that they ignored you, lied to you, made you feel invisible. And when your brain tries to romanticize them during withdrawal, pull out the paper. Force your brain to look at the entire desert, not just the single drop of water that they gave you. You're a human being, not a lab rat waiting for a random reward, and you deserve an entire ocean of love, consistency, and respect, not an eyedropper. When you finally decide to walk out of the casino and smash the eyedropper, something very intense happens to your body.
Hey, you get all sevens.
I hear from people all the time. I block them, but I feel physically sick. I feel an empty, aching space in my chest. It's so heavy that I can barely breathe. Does this mean that they're my soulmate? Clinical explanation for this pain so that you don't relapse. So in medicine, there's a concept known as phantom limb syndrome. Okay. When a person has a limb amputated, the neural pathways in the brain are still wired to expect that arm or leg to be there. For months after surgery, the patient can feel intense itching, burning, or severe pain in a limb that actually no longer exists physically. The brain is firing old signals into an empty space. So when you break a relationship addiction, you experience the same emotional phantom limb. For months or maybe even years, your brain's neural circuits have been wired to process intense stress, intense chasing, and massive dopamine crashes centered around the one person. Your daily routine was built around checking their status, reading their moods, managing their chaos, and when you suddenly cut them off, these neural pathways don't just instantly vanish, they keep firing. That heavy, aching emptiness that you feel in your chest is not the universe telling you that you should text them. It's your neural pathways reaching out into an empty space, firing old habit loops and wondering where the chaos went. So basically what I'm trying to say is it's an illusion. The pain isn't proof that they belong in your life. It's simply the physical proof that your brain is adjusting to a brand new landscape. Acknowledge the itch, but stop scratching it. So now that we understand how the eyedropper starves your brain, let's talk about the exact economic and physiological mechanisms behind why uncertainty breeds obsession. Psychologists call this a variable reward schedule. Okay, so let's look at this through like modern everyday phenomenon. So the shady online blind box auction. Think about a normal purchase and how it works. You go to a grocery store, you look at the shelf, you pick up a box of cereal, you pay $5 to $10, and you get exactly what you paid for. It's completely predictable. Because it's predictable, you don't get a massive rush of adrenaline. Your heart doesn't pound on the drive home wondering if there's cereal inside the box, right? You expect there to be.
Damn right, better be a good cereal. It's a nice ass toy.
I don't think they even do that anymore. You eat it, your hunger's satisfied, you move on throughout your day. What happens when you go like on an online auction site? You buy a mystery blind box from an unverified seller. Any guesses?
No.
All right. So the listing says inside the box could be a diamond ring, a brand new smartphone, or completely an empty space. The bidding starts at $100. You bid, you win. The box arrives. You tear it open with your heart pounding in your throat, and it's just a broken plastic toy. You feel a massive drop in your chest. But instead of walking away and deleting the app, what's your brain do?
Try it again.
Well, yeah, it might. Next time you buy the box, it might actually have the diamond ring. So you bid again and again. And maybe you spend thousands of dollars buying trash, completely obsessed with the possibility of the prize. You're not staying because the seller's treating you well. You're hooked because your brain is addicted to the high of the gamble. So when you're chemically addicted to an inconsistent person, you're bidding on a blind box relationship. If they're cold, distant, mean 100% of the time, then
they're assholes.
They'd clearly be labeled an empty box. But you're smart. You'd walk away from that instantly, right?
Yeah.
So the trap isn't that they're always bad. The trap is the mystery. But because they give you 3 days of freezing, silence followed by one single night where they buy you dinner, hold your hand, say exactly what you've been dying to hear, your brain treats this like the night of the diamond ring. So let's look at the deep comparison of how this functions in your daily life right now. When you pick up your phone 80 times a day to check their Instagram story, or you read into the punctuation of a text message, you aren't looking for communication. You're bidding on the mystery box. You're throwing your emotional currency, your time, your sanity, into an unverified auction, hoping that this time the box won't be empty. You've turned your heart into a high-stakes gambling floor, and you're losing your own self-worth trying to win a prize that doesn't actually exist.
Oh.
So let's look at one of the major reasons that you might stay. An economic and psychological trap is called the sunk cost fallacy. Okay. In behavioral psychology, there's a fascinating concept closely related to this. It's called the IKEA effect.
Isn't that a store?
It is. Studies show that consumers place a significantly higher value on products that they had to build themselves compared to identical pre-assembled products. If you buy a bookshelf from IKEA, you spend 4 hours sweating, losing your mind, turning the wooden pegs upside down and accidentally hammering your thumb, you love the bookshelf. Even if it's slightly crooked and wobbly, you look at it proudly and say, I built that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe some people. Listeners, many of you are staying in like a toxic relationship simply because of the relationship IKEA effect. You didn't just meet the person and have a smooth ride. You've poured years of emotional labor into them. You've spent hundreds of hours crying, explaining basic human empathy to them, decoding their texts, defending them to your family. You built this relationship with your blood, sweat, and tears. So when your logical brain whispers, hey, this relationship is crooked and wobbly, we should leave, your emotional brain panics. It looks at all that it's invested labor and it thinks, but look how hard I worked for this. If I leave now, all the suffering was for nothing.
That's why you grab the duct tape.
The hammer.
Yep, and the duct tape to fix it.
You aren't staying because the relationship is good. You're staying because you're emotionally overvaluing a broken piece of furniture just because you're the one who bled over the assembly instructions. Real love should be a sturdy structure, not something you have to constantly hold up with your shoulders so that it doesn't collapse. This brings us to our second core concept called cognitive dissonance. This is the mental discomfort that you feel when you hold two conflicting beliefs at the same time. For example, belief A, I deserve respect. Belief B, I'm staying with someone who treats me like garbage. So your brain cannot survive in this discomfort. It has to fix it. But instead of doing the hard work of leaving, your brain takes the easy way out. It changes belief A and it starts making excuses. So it says things like, well, they treat me like garbage because they had a hard childhood.
Excuses.
They'll change once this stressful month at work is over. Let's use a comparison. Okay, here's another analogy. We're going to play some games here soon too. Imagine that you hire a contractor to remodel your kitchen. You pay him a massive deposit. He shows up on day one, tears down your countertops, smashes your sink, and then he leaves. 2 weeks pass, no kitchen. You call him. He says, yeah, I'm sorry, I was stressed. I'll be there tomorrow.
I'd kick his ass.
He doesn't show up. Month 2, month 3, month 6 pass. You're still washing your dishes in the bathtub. Do you sit in your ruined house and think, well, I'm sure if I just explain how a kitchen works one more time, or if I buy him a better hammer, he'll fix this job?
No.
No. You fire him. You accept that you lost the deposit. You call him a scam artist and you find someone else.
I'd find the hammer and whoop his ass because I paid for it.
But in your relationship, you've been washing your emotional dishes in the bathtub for 3 years waiting for a contractor who has already proven to you that he doesn't know how to build the house. Stop buying him better hammers. Stop extending the deadline. He's not going to fix the kitchen. So let's look at some of the psychology, the physiological trauma response known as the fawn response, the absolute terror of the clean slate. So we all know the standard survival mechanisms: fight, flight, or freeze. The trauma researchers have identified a fourth one, which is called fawning. Fawning is when a human responds to chronic stress or volatility by immediately trying to please, appease, and pacify the person causing the threat. If I can make them happy, I can anticipate their needs. If I can neutralize their bad mood, then I'll be safe. If you're a chronic fawner, your logical brain, it can't get you out of the relationship because your nervous system is trapped in survival mode. You stay because your body genuinely believes that keeping the peace with a toxic person is safer than the alternative. What's the alternative? It's the clean slate. So, the thought of leaving creates an intense psychological vacuum. If you leave, you have to face the quiet apartment. You have to face the dating apps again. You have to face the uncomfortable realization of who you are when you aren't spending 24/7 trying to fix another human being. So to your brain, familiar pain feels infinitely safer than unfamiliar peace. You stay with the bad contractor because staring at a demolished kitchen feels less terrifying than staring at a completely blank blueprint. But hear this, the blank blueprint is where your freedom lives.
I will take the blueprint for 100.
Hopefully we have enough time for this. Let's get through what we can here. Time's almost up. All right, so let's do an interactive diagnostic check-in. Look at your daily role in your relationship. Ask yourself, are you a partner or are you an unpaid emotional paramedic? Let's look at the symptoms. Do you spend your evenings performing intense emotional CPR on someone who refuses to breathe on their own?
Nope.
Are you constantly driving an invisible ambulance through traffic, trying to rush to their rescue because they had another completely preventable emotional crisis?
Nope.
Okay. Do you look at them and think, they have so much potential. If I can just stabilize them, we can have a life?
Probably.
So if you're wearing a psychological stethoscope to bed every night, you're running a hospital, not a romance. The tragedy of being an emotional paramedic is that the patient never actually learns to walk and you end up completely burnt out from lifting their weight. An adult relationship requires two people who can walk on their own 2 feet. If you have to keep them on life support just to keep the relationship alive, it's time to clock out of that shift. So as we close our 30-minute together today, your official homework for the week is a tool that we're going to call the resignation letter. Now remember, this doesn't apply to everybody, okay? This is just part of our episode. But if you're staying, if you answered yes to them questions and the resignation letter fits, and you're staying even though you know better, it's because you're still secretly applying for the job of saving them, then I want you to write a literal letter of resignation to the role. Write it down. I hereby resign from the position of fixing this person. I resign from the job of explaining basic respect. I resign from washing my dishes in the bathtub. Don't send it to them. Read it to yourself. You officially quit the unpaid labor. Knowing better is only step one. Doing better means accepting that the IKEA furniture is broken, the bad contractor has left the building, and you're officially resigning from the paramedic crew. So it's time to take that brilliant advice that you give to your friends and finally give it to yourself. As we look at why you stay when you know better, I want to introduce you to 2 psychological terms that people often mix up. Understanding the difference between them is going to give you an exact diagnostic map of what's happening inside your head. Cognitive dissonance versus fragmentation. To understand the difference, let's look at 2 completely different shapes. The arguing room and the locked drawer. Cognitive dissonance is the arguing room. Imagine your mind is a single open room. In this room, 2 people are screaming at the top of their lungs. Person A is your logic yelling. This person is toxic. They lied. I need to pack my bags. Person B is your attachment screaming. But if I leave, I'll be completely alone and nobody else will ever love me. That screaming match is known as cognitive dissonance. Your mind is fully aware of both sides of the argument, and you're completely conscious of the fact that you're staying with someone that you shouldn't be with. Because the screaming is so loud and exhausting, your brain desperately tries to quiet the room by making an excuse. Well, they only lied because they had a stressful week. The argument stops the room, gets quiet, you stay trapped, Fragmentation is the locked drawer. Now let's look at something much deeper and much more severe. Fragmentation. So fragmentation doesn't happen because they're having an argument. It happens when the trauma or the stress of the relationship is so overwhelmingly high that your brain realizes that you cannot function. If you stay in the arguing room, your nervous system would collapse. So your mind acts like a desk with multiple drawers. To keep you alive and functioning, your brain takes the painful memory of the abuse, the fear, and the heartbreak, and it crams it into the bottom drawer. It slams it shut and it locks it. When you're fragmented, you aren't making excuses. You're genuinely psychologically disconnected from the reality of your own pain. You might go to work, smile, and look completely fine because that bottom drawer is tight. It's locked tight. But the moment that a trigger hits, a specific song, a sudden shout, or a threat of abandonment, that bottom drawer busts open, and you're flooded with a wave of terror that feels entirely out of proportion to the present moment. Cognitive dissonance is an elastic band stretched to its limit. There's an intense tension. You feel the pull every single day, and you're trying to force two opposites to stay connected. Almost out of time. So, fragmentation is a bone that has fractured into splinters. The connection has actually snapped. Your brain has compartmentalized your identity so that the part of you that survives the relationship doesn't have to look at the part that's dying inside. If you're experiencing cognitive dissonance, your job is to stop making excuses and listen to the logic screaming in the room. But if you're experiencing fragmentation, if you feel like you're living a double life, or if you look in the mirror and you don't recognize the person looking back at you, it's a sign that your relationship has crossed from a difficult romance into a trauma ecosystem. You can't think your way out of a fractured mind alone. That's when you need to bring in a professional therapist to help you safely unlock those drawers and pull the pieces of yourself back together. So, a fun game. Let's get through the game quick and then we'll end. Let's play red flag bingo. Before we clock out today, grab your imaginary scorecard. Okay, here's 3 behaviors that your partner does, and if your partner does them, yell bingo in your car right now or wherever you're at. Space A, they throw a tantrum. They vanish for 2 days and then they walk back acting like nothing happened. Space B, they tell you they love you, but they still have a dating app active because they just like the articles. Space C, they apologize for hurting you, but their apology includes the phrase, well, if you hadn't made me mad. If you just yelled bingo at your dashboard, congratulations, you'll want a complimentary exit ticket from the bad contractor's kitchen, so pack your bags. If you're currently sitting in a relationship that requires a full hazmat suit just to stand in the hallway, then I need you to memorize this final truth.
Get the hell out.
Knowing better is only step 1. Doing better means officially resigning from the saving crew. Stop looking at the broken IKEA bookshelf and thinking that your blood, sweat, and tears are going to make it straight. Stop washing your emotional dishes in the bathtub, waiting for a bad contractor to finish your kitchen that he has no intention of building. Most importantly, hand your stethoscope back. You're a partner looking for a mutual equal romance. You're not a paramedic assigned to pull someone out of the ditch they keep jumping into. So your homework this week, write the resignation letter. Sit down tonight, type it out, or put it in your notes app. I hereby quit the unpaid labor of fixing someone else at the expense of myself. Don't send it to them. Read it to your own reflection until you finally believe it. And before we close, I'd just like to say the fact that you miss them does not mean that they're healthy for you. The fact that you crave them does not mean that they're your soulmate. And the fact that letting go hurts does not mean that you're making the wrong decision. What we've talked about today is not weakness or a lack of willpower. It's neuroscience. It's conditioning. It's attachment. It's a nervous system that learned to associate chaos with connection and unpredictability with love. When you've spent years surviving on emotional eyedroppers, consistency can feel strange. When you've spent years riding roller coasters, peace can feel boring. When you've spent years chasing love, being loved can feel unfamiliar. But unfamiliar does not mean wrong. Sometimes it means healing. Today, we explored the mechanisms behind relationship addiction. We talked about dopamine, intermittent reinforcement, repetition, compulsion, cognitive dissonance, fragmentation, trauma response, and why your brain can become emotionally attached to someone who's hurting you. Next episode, we're going to go even deeper, because understanding the addiction is only half the story. Bigger question, what feeling became attached to that person? When they connect, okay, where they connected to your need to feel seen? Were they connected? Did you feel chosen? Did you feel safe? To feel important? To finally feel enough? Things like this. Because sometimes if we think we're addicted to a person, we're actually attached to a wound that existed long before they arrived. And until we identify the wound, we'll keep mistaking the person for the cure. So this week, I'd like you to be gentle with yourself if you're trying to, get yourself out of this and you're going through withdrawal. So don't shame yourself. If you're struggling to let go, don't judge yourself. Get curious. Ask yourself, what did this person represent to me? What did I feel when I was with them that I struggled to feel on my own? And what am I truly grieving? Because the answers to these questions may change everything. Thank you for spending this time with us today. Until next time, remember, you don't have to earn love. You don't have to chase love. You don't have to suffer to be loved. Real love does not require you to abandon yourself, and healing begins the moment that you stop asking another person to prove your worth and start discovering that your worth was never theirs to determine.
And you don't even need to hit a person with a hammer.
All right, we'll continue the next episode, which is going to be maybe possibly slightly more intense. You guys have a great week. Thank you for tuning in to Unapologetically Reborn. This is where survival ends and choices begin.
Yep.
They talked about addiction for years and years. The bottles, the bruises, the anger, the tears, the highs and the lows, the breaking apart, but seldom discussed what it did to a heart. Not the heart of the addict alone in the fight, but the child lying awake almost every night. The child learning silence instead of trust. The child taught survival because they must. The child counting footsteps, reading each tone, trying to predict if the house felt like home. The child growing older but never quite free, still carrying fear no one else could see. Some never touched substances, smoke, or a drink, yet still lived much closer to darkness than think. Because addiction does not simply stay inside one person and fade away. It lingers in children who learn to hide pain, who smile on the outside while drowning in rain, who grow into adults still searching to find why anxiety follows the back of their mind, why love feels unsafe, why peace feels so strange, why their whole nervous system braces for change. And somewhere inside them still echoes the plea, can somebody finally understand me? That question became a book for the children who learned to disappear, who carried survival for year after year, for the adults still asking, why am I this way? While carrying wounds they still hide today. Its pages were written to help people see the child underneath all the anxiety, to show them their struggles did not make them weak, but came from the chaos they never could speak. Because children can survive almost anything true, but surviving too long changes something in you. Wounds ignored do not just fade, they follow every choice we've made. Through anxious hearts and sleepless nights, through endless internal hidden fights. Unapologetically Unseen by Alicia Lynch. On Kindle for free starting May 23.